This is Chrissy.
This is Shirin.
And this is Two Girls Talking Shit.
Each episode will have deep discussion and conversation on topics that matter to us, ranging from wellness to politics.
Of course, with a healthy dose of pettiness, side-eye, and shade.
You ready, Chrissy?
You ready, Shirin?
This is
TGTS.
Hey, everyone. This is episode 2 of TGTS. This is Shirin.
And this is Chrissy.
And today we're going to be talking about wellness and whiteness.
Hashtag wellness is so white. But first,
Chrissy, what is up in your world?
the last 2 weeks have been wild. So much happening, like all really good stuff, but a little bit hectic. For one, I went to the CrossFit Games with Reebok.
Amazing.
And that was amazing. So yeah, I was there for the whole weekend. And y'all, let me just say, I've never quote unquote worked and had so much fun. So yeah, my job was just like to be there. And I went to a couple events, but it was so cool. We had media passes. So I like literally watched the CrossFit Games from like as close as you could possibly be. It was amazing. So yeah, it was really, really fun. But now I'm like really in crunch time right now, because I'm moving in less than 2 weeks. And if you came and look at my apartment, it does not look like I'm going anywhere. It looks like I very much live here. So a lot to do.
I feel like with moving, it's like this it happens and like
it's gonna happen.
The last couple days.
Yeah. It's gonna happen.
You can put stuff in boxes, you can like do things, but it's like those last days always suck.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I know I have to leave. So it'll get done. It'll be fine. Yes.
But Chrissy, does this make you an influencer now?
I mean, I feel like this might officially make me an influencer. As much as I hate that word, I really hate the term, but I feel like maybe this is it. Maybe I'm.
Are you giving away Reebok shoes right now or something?
I am. I'm giving away Reebok shoes. I think I might be an influencer now.
You're legit an influencer. You're legit now.
Yeah. So, but anyways, what's up with you? You've been traveling and doing all the things. So what's happening?
Well, I mean, not as sexy as you're traveling.
That's not true.
I was home. I went to Canada. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. So I went home for 2 weeks, which was super nice. But, it's like, family trips are like not the most rejuvenating of trips. It was fantastic. It was great. I got to see friends and family that I haven't seen for a long time. But I came back and I was like, it was crunch mode for me too, just for like work stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a great trip. And every time I go back to Canada, I'm like, why don't I live here?
Why don't you live in Canada? I mean, why don't you live in Canada? Well, don't leave. Stay in Brooklyn, but I'm just saying.
Right. We're super happy here, but like every time I go back, I'm like, you know what? These people know what they were doing. Like it just makes sense.
We could learn so much from our neighbors in the North. So much.
I mean, listen, there are issues with Canada, but I mean, when we're like talking comparisons to what's happening in the States, it's like,
No comparison.
But
I will say, your family likes to party. I saw a lot of dancing happening. I saw so much dancing happening.
Oh my gosh. So I'm Iranian and we love to get down. Like we put on a song with a little bit of a beat and all the Iranians are dancing. So yeah, no, we had a good time. I don't even think Raj, like my husband, knew what he was in store for. Like it was like when I tried to describe my like dinner parties, if there are any listeners who are Iranian, like people think it's like white people dinner parties, like, oh, sitting at a table, like, can you pass the mashed potatoes? Like, no, it's like, we're starting at 8:30. We're going to eat at like 10. Like everyone's like a free for all at the table, dancing until midnight, 1 a.m. It's fun.
It looks fun. It looks so much fun.
It was very fun. But so that was kind of my 2 weeks and now back to life.
And now back to life. Life is happening, but that's okay. It's all good.
Yes, it's all good. So should we just get into this topic because we have a lot to say?
So much to say. Yes, let's get into it. Okay, so Shirin, I need to know, when you first got into wellness, what were your thoughts on I won't even say, what were your thoughts in general? I won't even like preface it with anything.
So I have written about this extensively. I have a lot of thoughts about, and we're talking about the world of wellness. Let's first like clarify what that means. So I'm in the world of like kind of coaching, self-growth, self-development. You got into wellness through, I think, like fitness.
Yeah.
And so like wellness is kind of pretty all encompassing of those things.
Yeah.
But when I'm talking about wellness specifically in this kind of context is really when I got to coaching and self-development and self-growth. And, you know, I hadn't done any self-reflection in my life until maybe a couple of years ago, in my like early 30s. And, you know, the stuff I was learning, the stuff I was reading about was like really life-changing. But I would go to all these like lectures and all these programs and all these workshops, and it would just be a bunch of white people, you know, and for me, I've done a lot of unpacking around that. And I don't feel as triggered in those spaces. But like you go there, just a bunch of white people on the panel, maybe once or twice you see a token person of color. And it was like super frustrating because these people are talking about and invoking a lot of ideas that are not their own, right? That they're co-opting, not really like paying the respect or giving the source information of where it's coming from. And all of a sudden, you know, like it's the whole goop of it all. Like I've said this before. It's like, it's so frustrating when you like, I remember my mom getting so frustrated when pomegranates got big because Iranians have been eating pomegranates since day one. Okay. And like, she was like, what is, and she calls them pomegranates, not pomegranates.
I love it. I love it.
But like all this stuff that like we as people of color have been doing and been feeling ashamed, right? For doing it, like, you know, our weird parents or grandparents or whatever. And then all of a sudden now it's a cool thing. And so for me, like that was a thing when I got into coaching. I was like, I want to create a space that is inclusive and that everyone feels welcome to join the conversation and everyone feels like these are our ideas and like we can all learn from this and we can all grow from this. Because I think the problem with wellness is that right now it just seems like even though there has been a lot of changes made, it's not enough. It just feels like a space for white people and ideas for white people. And I really get so frustrated with that. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on it. How about you, Chrissy?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I came from a fitness background into the wellness industry, and very much of the same thing, right? Like going to fitness conferences and events and like being one of the only people of color there, a very small handful in similar situations. Like the panels are all white, the speakers are all white, like the organizers are all white. And I just think, you know, especially particularly in the fitness space, but I think in any wellness space, when you have a group of organizers that all have one perspective, like you miss very important things, right? And your information centers whiteness and caters to whiteness, right? And it's just, and it doesn't feel good, like as a person of color being in spaces like that. It's just like not the most inviting and welcoming space. And I agree with you. Like I've done a lot of my own work and unpacking that. So I tend to probably feel maybe more comfortable than some other people would be in those situations. And even still, like I go into situations where I'm like, oh, this doesn't really feel very good. Even now, like at this time, and like, even though I've been doing this work and like I'm very secure in everything, there's some spaces that just don't feel really good. And I think it's also perpetuated for me anyways, when it's a space where they're like, oh, this is an inclusive space, right? Like the words are there, but like the feeling is not there. And like, this is the thing, like, you know, I think there's a distinction that has to be made between diversity and inclusion, right? Diversity is just having people of different backgrounds there. Inclusion is like, do they feel welcome and able to thrive? And that's like a big difference, right? So even if you have like a handful of like people of color there, how do they feel in that space is what really matters. And I think that's the piece that's missing so much in the wellness world in general, is because I think like you acknowledge like it's getting better. Mm-hmm. And I think people are trying to be more conscientious of it, which is great. But again, it's this thing of not just like having other people there. That's like not enough, like just to check the box. It's like, are people able to feel welcome? Do they thrive in those environments? Do they feel like this event was put in place with them in mind and not like they have to come into white space and like assimilate to whiteness in that space? So those are all things that come up for me when I think about this conversation.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating for me because I think if any demographic needs this work, it is people of color because of like trauma.
Yes.
Hashtag trauma.
Hashtag trauma, right?
Trauma. But like, if anyone needs this work, it is us. And we're not just like, we're undoing ancestral trauma.
Yes. It's deep. Yes.
Deep. So if wellness and these ideas and these concepts are really needed for people of color, and I just feel like sometimes, especially the way things are presented, it is so whitewashed.
Yes.
The way the ideas and concepts, like a lot of the work that I do, like for instance, like I had a post about manifestation, which really resonated with people, because for a long time, like I didn't think like manifestation wasn't for me, because like I would see people like Gabrielle Bernstein like promoting it, and Marianne Williamson, and it's just like these really cisgendered skinny ass white women talking about manifestation, and I'm like, that's not me, so I guess this isn't for me. And also a lot of manifestation talk is about like manifest $1 million, which is cool,
awesome,
but like I would like to manifest like, I don't know, like something even deeper than that, like releasing my ancestral trauma and having like a lineage of, you know, things that are like,
I take that over $1 million.
Right. Like I don't need your $1 million with skinny ass body. Like that's not what I'm trying to manifest in my life. And so a lot of the work that I do is really trying to show people that like this actually is for us and we can use these beliefs, but also we have to take into effect, because like something like manifestation, when you're working with a community of color, the subconscious is like filled with so much intense trauma, beliefs from history, from your family, from your own life experience,
from living in this country. I mean, all the things, right?
All the things, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you can't just, you have to approach it so differently. And I just feel like there aren't enough voices out there that, and I know they're out there, but they don't have the platform, and they don't have the network. Like they're out there. I know they're out there, you know?
Yes. And I also think like on that same point, it's so important. Again, like I think another thing that's really missing is for like white women like out here talking about manifesting all these things without acknowledging like the real ramifications of like privilege and how things work in this country, right? Can be really triggering. And I think it's harmful to people because like me and you both really believe in manifestation. It's a very real thing. We've seen it happen in our own lives, right? But we've also done a lot of work around this stuff, right? So if you're just getting this information from someone and you're getting this from a white woman, you're a person of color, and they're talking about like manifesting $1 million, you're like, fuck that. Like, do you see what's happening?
Right.
And so it can just be really triggering as well, like almost harmful. And like, that's some white woman BS. I don't want to talk about that. Like, so I think there's so many layers to it. And like there just aren't enough people doing it. And there are people doing it with any bigger platforms.
Yes.
And I think that people who are at the forefront, especially these white women we're talking about, they have to be more conscientious about like how they're presenting this information.
Mm-hmm.
And like also they need to do some inner deep work about some other stuff too, right?
Yeah, we were talking about before we started, Chrissy, I'd love for you to share like your thoughts on just like now a lot of white women in wellness bringing up this idea of inclusion and diversity, but like it's not really represented in their platform, you know? So yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So this happens a lot. No,
wait, get ready. I feel like the energy in this call is so much more hype than like any of the conversations we've had. We're like, and another thing.
And get ready, buckle in, because I got something to share. No. But yeah, like everybody's talking about diversity and inclusion now, right? Which is cool. But like, I remember when I first started talking about this a couple years ago, there's very few people talking about it. So in one way, it's great that people are bringing this to the forefront of the conversations. However, I really think it's so important. Like if you're a white person doing this work and you want to be talking about the diversity and inclusion piece, it's really, really important that you've done your own work around your own privilege and about understanding like your role in white supremacy and how you're benefiting from it. Like you really have to do some deep work before you can go out and be like, I'm a diversity and inclusion like specialist, or like my business is diversity and inclusion, blah, 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 whatever. Because here's the thing, having somebody in your space that's Black is cool. Having them feel comfortable is a completely different thing. And I also think it's really, really important that people recognize that, you know, your whiteness is always at play in situations, right? So maybe you don't need to take up more space and be like the next representative for diversity and inclusion, right? Because again, you have to always be cognizant of the fact that if someone's reaching out to you to be like the representative, maybe you're not the right person. Like maybe this is another time where you need to like give someone else that platform and take up less space in a space that you already have, like white people have all the space in this like industry, not just wellness, all the industries, right? So like sometimes you have to be like, oh, I'm going to take a back seat. This is not the time for me to become the expert on this matter or to voice that I'm doing this work. Because here's what's really cool, doing diversity and inclusion work and not talk about it. Like just do it, right? Like you can do the thing without announcing it to the world. And like, that's what I like to see people doing, because you don't need like kudos and cookies for like doing something that like you should have been doing all the time.
Right.
And I also think it's really frustrating for people to see like white women, white people in general getting like kudos for doing a work in a space where they're already benefiting from because of their whiteness. It's like, okay, like, do you see what's happening here? This is white supremacy. Again, it's happening right now in front of our eyes. Yeah.
Ooh, that is such a like, man, everything you said, like, yes, yes, yes. And, you know, I struggle a lot with it too, because I find in this space, a lot of people, when they talk about diversity, like, oh, I'm trying to create a more diverse client base or audience. They talk about this word makes me so angry when it's included with diversity, sliding scale.
Oh my God. Please talk on it. Talk on it.
No, because the inherent belief is that people of color can't afford this work.
And that's why we haven't hired you.
Exactly. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I cannot tell you how many times I've had this conversation with people of wellness who are in the world of wellness who are white. And they're like, well, I guess maybe I need to create a sliding scale. And I'm like, no, it is not the prices that are the reason why someone of color is not coming to you. People of color have money and they want to use that money to make themselves better.
Right.
It's because
they don't want to use it with you. Sorry. I just had to interject that. Sorry. Okay.
I said it in a more nuanced way.
Right.
But like that, but that is what it is, you know? That really, really frustrates me, because I'm like, that's where you have to do the work. Like to really dismantle white supremacy, we all have to do deep, deep work that is uncomfortable. And it's not just about like, I have Black clients, I have like Middle Eastern clients. Like that is not diversity. Like that's not it. Like, so I think that's kind of one of the barriers too with all of this.
Well, and also like on that same note, when we start having this conversation about like, oh, I'm going to create special rates so I can get more customers of color or whatever, it also really like borders on the line of like that white savior complex that like, you know, like I'm going to help these people out and make this more accessible to them. Now, accessibility is a real conversation that like we all should be having in general. But I think it does need to be a distinct conversation than using the sliding scale and the words diversity together, because it's probably not the problem. And like I can tell you, we have both invested in coaches lots of times over the years, right? So it's not because we didn't have not women of color or anybody of color not coming to you doesn't mean it's because they can't afford it. Like right. Maybe your message doesn't resonate. Maybe you're just talking to other white women and like, I'm not interested in like that, you know? So I think that has to be a real like discussion and uncomfortable. Like you talked about uncomfortable conversations. Like, yes, this shit is uncomfortable, all of it. Right. And on the same note of being uncomfortable, we talked a little bit, I think before the conversation as well, is along with all these people talking about they want to create more diverse and inclusive events and like spaces, that also means that like you have to give up your spot sometimes at the table. Right. Yeah. If you are going to be out here talking about we need more diversity, inclusion, and fitness, but then every time this major conference comes, they ask you to speak and you know there's no other people of color speaking, there's no other women of color speaking, but you keep saying yes, like I don't care what anybody says, you are part of the problem. Yeah. Because you can't on one hand be like, we need more of this, and on the other hand, not be willing to give anything up, or use your voice to be like, hey, I want to do this event, but I've noticed this issue. Like, how can we bring in some more people before I agree to be a part of this? Like that's the difficult work that actually creating diversity and inclusion, you have to be able to do that.
Yeah. I have been very fortunate that a lot of the opportunities I've had to speak or do workshops have been in very inclusive spaces. And, but I'm curious about you, because I know you found yourself in situations where you may feel tokenized or like it's just the conference, you go there and it just is not. How do you navigate that, or how have you been navigating that, like as you become a Reebok ambassador?
Yeah, I am not a Reebok ambassador. In case Reebok ever listens, I am not out here telling people that.
In case Reebok wants to sponsor us, but anyway.
in case you're interested, we would be down for that though.
No, but so how do you navigate that?
You know, it's really challenging, and I feel like I'm still trying to figure that out. I had a experience with this like not too long ago, actually, where I got invited to speak at a conference, And before I agreed, like we had a phone conversation with the organizer, and she's really clear that like she knows I need to do some work around the diversity and inclusion piece. She wanted me to come and speak, but also like we had a very like poignant conversation that like if things were coming up, there was like an open door to like call her out or call her in, whatever you want to say. And there was a couple instances before the event where like we had conversations about things that came up. She seemed super receptive, and I like even sent her like stuff, resources, articles to read. So I was like, okay, this is great. This is good. But anyways, the event was like a miss, like by a long shot for lots of reasons. And I waited till like a week after the event because like, you know, she was feeling really, I could tell that she was feeling really good about the event.
Right.
Finally wanted to give her like her time to like enjoy. But then I sent her like a really honest email with like feedback, which I actually thought that I like went above and beyond to be really nice, which is not required, but like I was really, it's not required, but I really thought I did. And I was met with like total defensiveness. And not only that, she like ended up like blaming it on me, kind of like maybe, yeah, it was really bad. So that did not go that well. But what was a learning lesson for me in that situation is that number two, like this was an event that I was paid for. So number two, like, I mean, this might really sound harsh, but I'm just going to be honest. Like, if you want me to come to an event and speak, and you also want me to like be the voice of like all these things, like of reason, then you're gonna have to pay me. Like, it's not a free service.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't walk away from the situation feeling like, well, that was like that was like a shitty situation.
Right.
And I think it's a hard space to navigate sometimes because you don't always know what you're going to get yourself into, right? And like sometimes you think people have the best of intentions, you have a good feeling about it, you get there, you do feel like you've been tokenized.
Yeah.
And that's just like I think is going to happen sometimes. But I am trying to be more discerning about it because my thing is like I'm not here to be the token. And if I wasn't be the token, you're gonna have to pay me a lot to be the token, right? Like you're gonna write me a really nice check if that's what I'm coming for. Not that I'm gonna do that, but I'm just saying,
right?
Like it's just like I'm not gonna show up to make your event look good, and then in the back you're not really interested in change,
right?
I think the other piece of that is like if you really want to like create a better environment, then you have to be able to sit with those uncomfortable conversations that come up, and you have to be able to deal with the feedback and be like, okay, that hurts, but okay, I can work on this and get better. And like, that's the part. If you can't handle the feedback, then like forget even trying to create that space because you can't create it.
Right. I think, you know, in this world now of like creating inclusivity, we all have blind spots, right? We all have privilege. And so we are all going to make mistakes. I think that's just a given. And so then the thing becomes like, how do you respond? Like when someone, and that's like, that's more important. The important thing isn't that like you made a mistake. Like everyone does that. It's like, what is your response then? And I feel
100%.
a place where so many people fail is in their response where they get defensive instead of, you know, taking a moment, taking a step back and perhaps like looking at how they're complicit in, you know, like actually own up to what someone is pointing out. Right.
Yes.
There's
a book for that, by the way. It's called White Fragility. So there's a book for that. It's called White Fragility. People read it.
Well, and you know, like, but we, you know, like I've had moments with that because I have privilege and stuff. But maybe as like a person of color, like I'm so used to seeing where I'm at fault. Like I'm always like have been navigating this world trying to figure out, you know, so like for me, I'm like, oh, cool. Someone called me out on something. Let me see how I can like, whatever. But yeah, like, yeah.
I think you're right. And like, that's a really interesting point that you bring up because I don't know. I just really think that people of color are better at that. Again, because I think maybe we're just like socialized to like fit into someone else's world.
Right.
That I made a mistake. Okay, I'll fix it. What I've noticed, I just have noticed with my interactions with white people, especially when I've like called them in. And when I say call them in, what I mean is like I'm having a private conversation with you. I'm not like blasting you on social media. What I've noticed, even when I'm just calling people in, is that people aren't interested in being called in. And even on like simple things like, hey, that word is like really offensive to Indigenous people. So like maybe you shouldn't say that. Like for me and you, if somebody told us that we were using a word that was offensive to Indigenous person, we'd be like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Word is gone, never using it again.
Right.
But I find like with white women sometimes or white people, they're like, but I should be able to use that word. And it's like, because I meant it differently or I'm using a different context.
Right.
And so the simple like, oh, I'm sorry, it's done. I won't say it again. Right. Like it's just that easy sometimes for me. But I think there is like this idea that like white people own like
Right.
narrative, right? So it's like, no, this is my narrative and this is how it is. And like, you're wrong. So unfortunately, like, whatever.
Right. And we
Yeah.
also have the shared experience, right? Like I have had experiences
Yes.
where someone has said something where it is offensive and no one's come to my defense.
Yes.
And so if someone is like, hey, that word is actually really problematic, I'm like, oh, okay, I will take that very, very seriously and I will look at that, you know, and try to not use it again. And when I do, I will own up. You know what I'm saying? Like
Of
I feel like
course.
white people lack that because they haven't been called on their shit. And
Right.
so it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's
And also because I'm petty, I mean, they created most of these words, right?
beep boop.
I'm just saying. I had to put on my petty hat for a second.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. And you know, bringing it back to wellness. I mean, we have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah.
We had a lot of thoughts on wellness and whiteness. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it is still a very white dominant space. One that I think now, as it's more in like people are now way more interested in it, so there's lots of more people of color who are interested in it, and I just think it's like it's a real disservice to like just the greater like wellness community that we aren't having more of these conversations,
Yeah.
right? Like I feel like
Yes.
people, yes, yes, yes,
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I have a question for you though.
yes.
So I have definitely seen more of a movement of like women of color in particular gravitating towards wellness spaces. So what's your thoughts on like like wellness spaces for only women of color or for only Black women? Like what are your thoughts on that?
Listen, I'm all for it. Like I think that uh, you know, I do believe that like ultimately in the end it would be great for all of us to be in the same spaces together, but I feel like there needs to be a period of just like being safe.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's safe, like I have this thing called Brown Girl Brunch, which is
Yeah.
just for women of color. And I one of the women came to me. So it's this brunch that we have where it's social, but it's also actually we go really deep. We always have a theme or a topic and we get around the brunch table and we get deep, you know? And a woman came to me and she said, you know, Shirin, like I didn't realize how much I needed to be in a space where women look like me, talk like me, have shared experiences look like me. She's like, I felt like I could leave my mask at the door and I felt like I could take a deep breath for the very first time.
Yeah. That's
You know what I'm
major.
saying? It was huge.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, you know, it really, really hit me because I'm very fortunate. I find myself often in spaces where it's mostly people of color, but I realize, especially within the world of like corporate world or whatever, you're dealing with a lot of microaggressions, a lot of white people, a lot of bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like if your journey, you need to have that safe space of just being with people who look like you. I think that is a beautiful thing. And that's something that we really do need to provide more of in the wellness world. And yes, I get it. Like the conversation needs to include all of us. It needs to be a dialogue. But for those of us who need to heal, like
Yes.
let us heal the way we need to heal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And I think just to add on to that, like there are so many wellness spaces that are really white anyways that like it's fine. There's plenty of places for non-white people to go or for white people to go that, you know, we can have our own spaces of color. And you're right. It's something just like healing can take place in a different way, in my opinion, when you can be with people like Black and brown women and like really shared experience and talk about things in a way that maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable talking about in front of other women. One thing I will say is our retreat that we had, the Glow Up, obviously there was like a mix of all different backgrounds. And I think our space, and I mean, I'm biased, but I think our space was really unique in the fact that women, even women of color, felt really comfortable sharing vulnerably there. And I think that a key to that is that like the facilitators, right? Like you have to create that environment in which that can foster that environment in which people from all backgrounds will feel safe together and sharing. And I think also a big part of that is like, you know, these are things that we talk about in our work all the time. So that also happens to be the type of people that we attract to our events.
Yeah.
So it makes that easier to have that kind of dialogue across race when you have an audience that's really ready to do that difficult work and to like hold space for each other and like deal with the uncomfortable conversations. So I think that makes a difference too.
100%. So for people who don't know, Chrissy and I and Allison Tenney, we have a retreat. Our first one was this past Memorial Day. We're going to have another one this Memorial Day in 2020. And yeah, I mean, it was like the retreat I'd always been dreaming of. But again, out of the 3 facilitators, 2 of us are women of color, right? And like, you know, it's so funny because like, it's not like I go into things like being like this. And I think that's the difference. It's like, I'm not going into being like, how can I make this the most diverse and inclusive thing ever? It's like, no, I'm a woman of color. So that just happens. And like the things that I'm considering and thinking of, I don't know, but the intention is to make it more inclusive. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
that's why when you see something where just the entire higher ups are just white people, and yes, they are hiring people of color. It's not going to be the same thing. It just won't be the same thing. It can't
be the same thing. And
yeah.
like what you said is really important.
Sorry, there's like lightning happening. It's very, very,
oh gosh, so
very
like
transformation. All right.
I liked what you said. It was like, yes, yes, we like that.
Yeah.
But like what you said is like, yeah, if everyone at the top, but is white, right? Like if you were talking about corporations and whatever, wellness, whatever we're talking about, if everybody at the top is white, like it's just not possible to create that space. And so like for me, especially like when I'm talking about wellness in this industry and someone's like talking about, oh, we're diverse and we're inclusive. Like one of the first things I do is go to their website and see like who's on the board of directors, who are their founders, because if everyone's white, like it's not it. Sorry. Like I already know, like I don't need to go any farther. I know that like you're missing the mark. And that there's a lot of work to be done. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is one thing that, like one thing that we all need to, I think, become a lot more active in is putting our money into, like, if we're in wellness, for instance, like organizations that really do reflect what we believe in, right? With inclusivity, looking at like the higher ups in places and seeing what that's like. And if it's not, like, really calling them out. I had a client who, she wanted to become a coach. So she was doing this coaching program. I'm not going to name what coaching program it was, but we were working together and she's like, I feel really uncomfortable. She's a white woman. She's like, I feel really uncomfortable because they're just like not acknowledging certain like privilege, and they're not acknowledging like just the language they're using. She's like, they keep using the word tribe. And I just really feel like this is super problematic. And so she sent them like a really nice email kind of listing everything that, she was finding was an issue. And of course they just were like, well, if you don't like it, we can refund you X amount of dollars. And so she was like, I left. But like, again, like this is a very big, like Oprah supported person out in the world.
That's problematic. That's really problematic.
That is so problematic. Like who is still using the word tribe?
It's 2019. It is not okay to use the word tribe anymore. I feel like we are past that point in life.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just like people, like I see some coaches who are really trying, there's a really good coach, Tanya Geisler. I love her, white lady in Canada. I was doing one of her programs and she would just be like, hey, y'all, like she was like rewording everything. So it was like able-bodied, like language that was messed up. Like all of that lingo, that lingo that you find in coaching worlds, like tribe and all of that. Like she was like, I am shifting this and I'm in the process of doing it. And let me know if you find anything or if I say anything, let me know, because that makes her a better coach and it makes her community even better.
Well, so this is what's so wild to me is because like, that's how easy it is, right? Yeah. Like so this woman sent her this email and they can be like, wow, I never even thought about that. Let me rethink how I'm doing some things. Mm-hmm. But instead it's like, oh, I'll just give you your money back. Goodbye. And I think that also speaks to the fact that like, at this point, I'm sure this person has so much money, they just don't even care about this person. Right. They're like, all right, whatever. I'll find someone else to fill your spot. Like, no big deal. Versus this other woman who's like, I'm trying to fix things. And yes, I'll still make mistakes. Because we and you do this all the time, right? Like, I am really trying hard to take the word crazy out of my vocabulary. But I've been saying it for 33 goddamn years, right?
Yes.
So, well, maybe not 33, but I've been saying it for a lot of years, right? So it takes a lot of practice. I catch myself still saying it, so I correct myself a lot. I'm also trying to stop saying guys all the time. Hard one to do. So it's like I'm constantly correcting myself. Like that's okay, that's normal. But like to just completely ignore it and be like, oh well, like this is what I say, just deal with it. That sucks. Yeah.
It really, really sucks. You know, we're going to talk about another podcast we're going to have is we're going to talk about appropriation, because like this is a big old space where we can talk about that as well. I don't know if we want to get into that now, but
We should save it because I have so many things to say. Like, there's a story I want to share right now, but I'm not. I'm going to save it. But yeah, we should talk about that. Maybe, yeah, we'll talk about that really soon.
We'll talk about that soon.
But do you see a lot of, we'll just say this one part. Do you see a lot of appropriation in wellness though?
Oh,
well, like language, everything, right?
Language, everything. Yeah, like there's, God, like I have so many stories too, but again, like manifestation is like, it comes from many different cultures. A lot of those cultures, like African, Middle Eastern, like, right, like indigenous, like these are our ideas, yo, like these are ours. Yes. And they made us feel terrible for centuries for having them, and now we're like giving them thousands and thousands of dollars to teach us our own shit.
But this is how white supremacy works, y'all. Like, this is how it works, literally.
Yes. So
yeah.
we can.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But that was one of the things, though, that you did say in that post. Is you're like, what did you say?
Is woo ain't white?
Yes, that was it. Woo, it's not, right? But yeah, we'll have a whole episode about appropriation because that's we'll be here all day if we keep talking about this now. But
So what do we feel like? I mean, what do you feel like we would love to see shift or change, or what are some actionable steps that like people can or we can take to shift some of this conversation or shift the energy that's in wellness right now?
I mean, for one, I think we all should be conscious consumers, like I already spoke to, and like, where are we putting our money? Like, there's so much money in capital. And so I really, really believe in like supporting organizations or individuals who are really doing the right things. And that's where we should put our money. I think that's super important. And I'm also like, I'm not really a big call out culture on Instagram. That's not really my jam. I don't really like that energy. However, I do think that, well, no, I'm not going to be petty. I do call them out on Instagram. No, don't call them out. We'll do whatever you feel led to do. But again, I think I'll just go back to supporting people who are doing the right things. But I also think it's really important, like, in terms of like calling in people, is like, if you have friends or other wellness professionals that you are associated with and they're doing like these problematic things, like talk to them about that, right? Like, have honest conversations about them and with them. And I think it's really interesting sometimes because I think for people, it's like easy to call out corporations or call out like the president. It is much more challenging for people to have those conversations with their friends and their family members, and people that are close to them. But those are important conversations to be having, 100%. And to also, like, you know, if you have a platform, like, talk about these things and you're in the wellness space in particular, like, have honest conversations about this. And if you're white, be willing, again, to like actually do something, right? Because talking is just like, anybody can talk about it, but like, be willing to put your privilege on the line in situations, however that looks, and like, be about it.
Yes. I 100% agree with everything that you said. And we brought this up earlier, but again, like, I think that white people in the world of wellness, like, if you really are into this idea of inclusion and diversity, is like really like referring people to other coaches or fitness people or whatever of color, because I see a lot of damage and trauma caused by people working with white people, and white people not really fully understanding that experience. You know, I think a lot of clients come to me because they know that I understand them on a real deep level. Like, a very easy example of this is, for instance, like boundaries or something. Like, that's something we talk about all the time in wellness, like boundaries, which is, they're super important, right? But, you know, I've had like, like a white therapist tell me like, oh, well, you should just like cut X out of your life, like a family member or something. And
listen,
I'm like, I can't, like, I am a like, I like boundaries, like tell your mom not to, like, I'm like, if I told my mom not to do that,
I'm backhanded at 33.
Right.
Do you know? Do you understand?
That's like very easy, like, but it's like, we can't talk about certain things with like, you don't understand the culture, you don't understand the history.
The cultural implications.
So while yes, boundaries are super important, when a white person is like thinking of boundaries, they can't see it. Like, that is not the same boundary that I can use in my life. I can use boundaries, but not
like that.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes, 100%.
It's just like you can cause some damage and stuff. So like white people also need to be referring people, saying no to opportunities, like you said. Like if there's no other person of color, bring it up and like say, sorry, I have to like decline. And yes, it does mean like losing an opportunity, but that is what this is all about, because those opportunities have been taken from us from day one.
Forever, right? Yeah, I think that's a really important, everything you're saying is really important. And I think, again, on your same point is like, you should know your limitations, right?
Yes.
Like same thing for me, like clients come to me and I'll be like, listen, I'm probably not the right coach for you. That is okay, right? Like refer them to someone else. And like, you don't have to be for everybody. And especially if you're going to cause that person harm,
Yes.
you're supposed to be helping them. Just send them to someone else for the love of God, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oof. Oh my God. Yes. Wellness to whiteness. We can talk about this like part 3, 4, 5, 6.
All of the parts. Yes.
But we have to get to our third. Oh my gosh, do you hear this lightning? This is
a serious storm happening out there.
Summer storm.
Do you have to go somewhere later?
No, actually.
Oh, that's good, because
my plans are canceled. I know.
Okay. Well.
But, okay, so we are asking for a friend. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is our question today for asking for a friend?
Oh, we have a juicy question today, and I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on this, Shirin. How do you break up with a friend when you just realize this is no longer a friendship that you desire to be in?
Okay, so this is so strange, but the past month I have had like multiple clients coming to me with this issue of like friendships and friends. And so I have like many thoughts on this, but I think that like there's, as we get older and we realize that our values are changing, we realize that some of our friends are like no longer really a part of those values.
Right.
And so one thing that's like really, really helped me is actually having like different categories for friends. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like those friends that you can be super honest, vulnerable, and like that encompass all of your values aren't going to be as many. Like there's going to be, right? It's like
circle.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
To expect that of all of your friends is actually that's just too much, right? Like it's just like your partner in life cannot be everything. Like my husband isn't my best friend, my like lover, my like he can't be everything to me, right?
Right.
And I feel like with friendships, it's the same way that like, if you have those 2, 3 core friends, that is great. And then other friends, like I have categories of friends, like those friends that I like to go out with, or those friends that like, I do X, Y, and Z with. And I find that there's some friends that I love them to death, but that they like, I can't get them out of my life because I don't want to, but like, I don't like, they suck the life out of me, or so those people, and I don't know where I heard this from. And someone was like, those friends you don't go out to dinner with, you do an activity with.
Yeah. Yes, like, that's great advice.
I was like, oh my God, it's so true. Because that's what a lot of women do. Like, let's go get drinks. Let's get coffee. Right. And then that friend is like talking your ear off and you're like, oh my God, I love her so much. But like, if I hear about this guy one more time,
drain the life out of me. Yes, right? Absolutely.
And
yeah.
Like, someone was like, do an activity, like go to a pottery class or this. And like, so that was one thing. But also like, so I have gone actually through a friend breakup, and now we're friends again.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Tell me more about this.
So the way that I navigated this was, there had been a couple incidents that really hurt me. And there was, oh my gosh, can you hear this rain, right? Can you hear it?
I can't hear the rain,
okay,
but
I'm hoping
really
you
loud.
On the other end can't. But
no, I can't hear it.
Sorry, everyone. Anyway, but so there are a couple incidents that were very hurtful. And finally an incident happened and I just kind of like stopped contacting her. And that obviously wasn't like the cool thing to do at all. She got back to me and was like, hey, listen, I feel like you're not really whatever. And I actually wrote her a very open and honest email. And I was like, listen, these are the things that have happened and it's left me feeling this way. And I was just super honest with her. She got back to me and was like, I'm really sorry. That was never my intention. And we literally weren't in each other's lives for like a year and a half.
Wow.
And then she reached out to me again and was like, hey, listen, I'd love to go to coffee and see if we can like talk again. And now we're in each other's lives. It's not to the same intensity as before. I also know my boundaries with her, right? Like I know how I feel comfortable and when I feel comfortable. But that was actually like a really beautiful, because I think often what happens with friends is like we just stop talking to them or we say something super hurtful and it just ends. And so that was like, and then on the other side, I have been the friend who's done something shitty to another friend. So I had an incident last year where I didn't really honor a friend properly. She let me know in an email and I owned up to it. And I was like, you are absolutely right. And she was like, listen, I need time and space. And we were able to come back to it like, again, a year and a half later. So I think it's just like being honest with someone is so helpful, not attacking someone, but being like, this is what you did. This is how I feel. You don't have to put that emotional labor in, but you can also, I mean, listen, like we can just ghost people. Like it's not the best thing to do, but like if you don't want to put that emotional labor in, okay. But I found for me, every time I've done that, and even if it's not the person coming back, I leave with an open heart, you know?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
No, I love that advice. And I personally am not a huge, I've been in situations where I feel like I don't know who ghosted who, but like something happened and then like we just never talked about it. Which I don't know. I never have good feelings and things end like that. So I'm a big fan of just like having the difficult conversation as well. I do love the advice about the categories because I think you're right. Like you're the people that like get you fully, that's a very small circle, at least for me, right? Like I don't know. I see people sometimes they're like, these are my 15 best friends. I'm like, how do you have 15 best friends? Like, so that's never been me. So I definitely understand with the categories. And I loved your idea about just an activity because I definitely have friends who are like, I love them, but every time we leave, I am drained.
Yeah.
So that's really good, solid advice. But I think honesty is a big thing, right? And I think speaking our truth is really challenging sometimes, but it's also necessary. So yeah, I love that advice.
Because I just think as women, we have, you know, like what has our development or conversation around friendship been past the point of like high school, right?
Right.
Like you have a bunch of friends and you guys like do everything together. And like, that's it. Like that's how we've conceived of friendship. And so now as grown as adult women, I feel like we need to have, like, we really need to reassess and redefine what friendship is, what friendship means to us, and who gets to be our friend.
Yeah, and also recognize that like friendships change, right? Like we are grown-ups now, like people get married and relationships change. People have children and your relationships change, right? So it's always going to be shifting. And so like even if someone was like a really close friend before, maybe like you're a little bit more distant, but I have friends that like I have not talked to for like a year, nothing happened. And then like we just pick up like nothing ever happens, right? So I just think giving people the space to like live their lives and understand that things are going to change is also part of like adult friendships, right?
And also, you know, like what are your expectations of your friends, and do they know what those expectations are? I think that's something, you know, like when it comes to communicating what we need from people, we're not really good at that. Like we can communicate how we feel and how they're making us feel, but then we can't really tell people like get that specific thing of like, well, how can I help you not feel this way? We're just like, well, just like be a better friend. I'm like, well, what does that
mean
right?
to you? Yeah.
There's this really, so there's I've talked about this a lot with like my clients and stuff, but there's this woman, Allison Armstrong, and she does a lot of work around men and women in communication. A lot of her ideas are very backwards and like anti-woman, but so like, I don't know, like take it with a grain of salt, but some of the stuff she says is really on point. And she has this like script for communication that I use. It's supposed to be with just for men, but I use it with women as well. I use it with everyone. But her thesis is that the people who love us want to provide for us. Like they want to make us feel good, all of them, right?
Yeah.
And so she's like, but you have to get clear on what it is that you need from people, right? So often, a lot of the times, we feel disconnected from someone, right? So you're like, I feel disconnected. Well, they need to spend more time with me. And they need to like put more and like invest more in this friendship, right? But my idea of time and my idea of investment and friendship is different than yours.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So the script goes like, it would provide me with, right, letting them know what it's going to provide. So it would provide me with like a sense of connectedness. It would provide me with like, whatever that is. If you could, and then really saying those things, like if you could check in with me once a week and like before my birthday, like check in with me and see if we like, you want to do something or whatever that is. But like really getting like, we actually need to do some work too and be like, what it is that I really need from this person.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we kind of forget, like people don't know what we need. We know, we don't, right? Yeah.
And I think this is so important in friend relationships, right? Because I think that people don't do that enough in friend relationships or ever in friend relationships, right? And so you're right. So much could be avoided if we were just like identifying what that actually means for ourselves first. Because like, do you even know what that means for yourself? You say like more time. What does more time mean to you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that is amazing. I love that.
Yeah, it's a really great, like Allison Armstrong, and the script is like, it would provide me with X. If you say the things you need, and then you say like, can I help you? Like, can I help facilitate that? Is there any way that I can help you do that? Because I think then when you kind of come to someone with those things and they're like, oh, okay, she needs me to do these things. Like, yes, I can, or no, I can't do that. So I'm not your girl right now. Like, I have a kid, or I have a husband, or like, I'm going through this. So like, I can't do these things for you. So maybe this isn't our season of friendship, you know?
Yeah. Yes. I love that. Expectation management. That's important.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to
hashtag expectation management.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, this was an amazing conversation, Chrissy.
Oh, it was so great. And also, we would love to hear your thoughts on this. So like, send us a DM, hit us up on Instagram. Let us know what your thoughts are on this whole topic of wellness so white too.
Also, we need to put because like, we don't even know how to podcast, but like, I think people are supposed to leave reviews.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. That's a thing. Leave us a review. We are so professional.
Leave us a review. Do like the star settings and stuff,
yes.
But like, let us know if you're pumped for this, because we like talking to each other, and we hope you like that too.
We love it. Yes.
Okay. So
all right. We will
join us next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of TGTS. If you like today's episode, please subscribe, review, or leave a comment for us. And please share the TGTS love. Until next week, bye.